People who hang mature bucks on their wall every year or two don't do it on accident. Big bucks don't make that many mistakes. You have to be doing something right. Figure out how they live. Figure out where they're at. Use woodsmanship and skills to hunt them deer down, and you'll have a lot more success than randomly hunting food sources and scrapes and rubs like everybody else. A lot of people are going to tell you that their area, deer don't bed in specific spots. They bed randomly. They bed all over the place, and there's no way to really figure them out or to bed hunt. And I disagree with that. I've hunted all over this country in all different terrains and properties, and there are a lot of properties where it's a lot harder. And a lot of places where it's a lot harder to figure out bedding, and it is a little more random. But mature bucks really lock down in specific spots, specific areas. And even when they're traveling, they stop at specific bedding areas to bed, and they leave sign there. And to somebody putting in the time and scouting, you can put yourself in place and you can still hunt mature bucks, and specifically certain bucks, an exact buck, the one you want, your target animal. You can hunt them down in those hard spots, and I've done it. So that statement is false. There's a lot of people who really believe it, and I understand why. When I go out and look at these large swamps and these large, vast areas, today we're going to scout a very large section of swamp. We're first going to look at the edges where I've seen some real big bucks, where I think nobody's hunting because it's kind of overlooked. And then we're going to go out deep. And I know we're going to run into vast bedding areas and areas that have bedding everywhere. And we're going to run into bedding that covers maybe a half-mile stretch. You find beds everywhere. But what you need to do is concentrate on where are the big bucks bedding. Not where are the deer bedding, not what's filling the voids. Where are the big bucks bedding? And we're going to do that by looking at the sign, looking at the track size, looking at the rubs, looking at the historical rubs. Because in a lot of cases, you scout these spots, there might not be a big buck there now. That doesn't mean there won't be one next year. That doesn't mean the 3-year-old sign you're looking at now isn't mature next year. So you want to find where those big bucks live. And what I've found is when you get in the 2- and 3-year-old range, especially the 2-year-olds, they just bed all over the place. They haven't found their place yet. As they get into 3, they start locking down into certain areas. And when you get 4, 5, 6-year-old bucks, they start getting really specific about what they need to bed and where they bed. And it ain't always easy for me and you to see that. But if you go out and you look at the beds, there's going to be sign those big bucks were there. There's going to be rubs that are high, big. And they're going to be around historical rubs, meaning deer have done that over years and time. Those big bucks are not stupid. They really become more homebodies. They really lock down in certain bedding areas when they get older, no matter how big the area is. And finding those areas in those vast areas where big bucks hang out, and not just the general population, is what you need to do. It ain't easy, and it's going to take a lot of walking. It's going to take a lot of investigation. It's going to take a lot of time. And for those of you who tell me you don't have the time to spring scout, well, then you don't have the time to hunt. The scouting is more important. I actually see much better results on the years that I scout more than the years that I don't. Because it's usually those spots that I just found that pay off. I'm scouting a swamp that's got various terrains in it, and I know there's some really big bucks here that made it through the year from last year. And this particular spot here is right up against private, right up against where the hunters come in back here. And I know that this is like an overlooked spot, and I've seen real big bucks all around out here in daylight during season and stuff, and hunters have been hunting around here quite a bit. So I figured they're coming out of this corner. They almost have to be. I figured I'd have to get across this grassy stuff and into that dogwood over there and down into the nasty in order to get beds, but it's pretty nasty here right along the edge of this right here. And I was pretty surprised to start finding beds right away. I mean, this bed is pretty pounded to the ground. It has a rub up there that's, you know, the height of like a 2-year-old. And there's a rub at that bed up here too. And a bed back there. Look at that. So it looks like there's some deer bedding right on this transition right here, which is a little bit surprising to me. I would expect them to be a little further back. I guess they're probably monitoring the human axis that goes about 30-40 yards from us right over here. They're probably monitoring them, knowing when they're here or whatever. But if they walk out that way, which is the direction I would think they would go, they're going to be walking into view of hunters. That's why it surprised me. But they probably just hold up in here till dark if somebody comes back there. It's kind of good to know that information, but there's bedding spots in here all over the place. You can see them over there. So there's deer definitely using this. Look at that bed. That's interesting. Makes it a little more difficult hunting because I was hoping to get back into here and get them before they get up this far. We'll see if I find any real big buck sign back here in these beds, or if the big buck sign is up there. Then I'll just have to figure out a way to get up there without spooking these deer back into it, which shouldn't be too difficult, I guess. So all along this transition, there's beds in here all over the place. There's another one right there. And there's some broken off rubs right there. There's feces all along this trail. And the one thing I'm not finding is hunter sign, which is good and what I expected. I don't think people are going back in here. It just seems like it's an overlooked spot, and it's a little bit wet for people to walk through and a little thick. I don't think anybody's coming in here. They're going around to where they think deer should be, way in the back, because I'm literally right next to the parking lot, actually. Starting to get a little more swampy here and look a little more where the big bucks would be. I'm starting to see some historical rubs and some pretty good beds. That's a pretty good bed for early season, but I don't see any fresh rubs. I see some historical ones. There's poop. There's a pretty good historical one. The amount of bucks I was seeing around here and the size of them, there should be some markings and competition in here. Here's a bed here. These really look like early season beds here. For sure. Pretty big bones. Let's see where the animal's laying though. Here's more bones, some vertebrae, and a hip bone. It's kind of a good thing because deer usually go back to their bedding areas to die, places they feel the most secure. So literally a lot of my best bedding areas, I find a lot of dead deer in. As the swamp gets thicker and thicker and more full of dogwood, you're finding more and more worn-in beds. But I still haven't found a lot of big buck sign. I'd like to see some big rubs back in here someplace to show they're competing for this bedding area. Now, on a trail here littered with deer tracks coming in from that way or going that way, but it looks a little too good to be true. It's too open. I'm sure this is probably some, yeah, look at this, sawed off. I see a broken branch up there too. So somebody's back here hunting. Too good to be true, I guess. But I'm gonna still look around that backside if this guy's hugging over here. Because this guy's got a beat trail. Yeah, look, here's a big broken branch here. With a trail like this, he's way over hunting this. So if there's any big bucks left, which is probably why I haven't seen any big rubs over here, they're going to be back there and going around them. But he may have just ruined the whole area. But this is, yeah, look at that. Look at that branch he sawed. Holy cow. I mean, look at the size of that. So, this guy is way over hunting this, for sure. Which, I see some old rubs here, some historical ones. They were probably fresh when he was back here. And why he set this up is because of those, most likely. Here's a fresh one. And that's fairly high. Probably a 2-year-old. Now, where is he hunting? He might be right here, because there are a couple good... Oh, there's a real good rub right there. I missed it because it's coming the other direction. That's high up. That's going to be like a 3-year-old. But I'm sure he is hunting like maybe that tree right there, that real tall, straight one. I don't think he went past her. He may have, though. The deer trail kind of goes past, but I haven't seen any more cuttings. Yeah, I don't think he's down in this stuff. I think that's him. So that being the case, I think there might still be deer bedding over there and going that direction. Guess we'll find out. It's a little hard for me to believe that these guys really think that they can come out here, find some deer sign, take a saw and just cut a sidewalk trail to a tree, and that they think they're going to shoot some giant buck out here. I don't think deer notice that. Crazy. Everything in here is underwater, so it's like the high spots are the beds. This was probably a really good area when all this ash was alive. Here's a fresh rub here. Probably a 2-year-old. Could have been a bed right here, right up just barely out of the water. But there's a hunter sign right there. It's an old sign though, hopefully he's gone. You know, a lot of people get into this stuff gun hunting too and walk through it. They'll leave a little sign. If that's the only piece of sign we see, it's not that big of a deal. Looking for a main trail that goes through here, and I think this is gonna be it. Main one right through the middle here. And then where does it go into the swamp here? I think that's what I really want to look at, is what's down there. But I think first off, I just want to see where this goes and what's up here. What is going on back here? I'm really shocked there's no big rubs here. There should be some, one would think. Unless there's getting pressure back in here. So walk back here, I'm noticing right away the lack of big buck sign. You'd think there'd be more sign on this little island here, because this is getting a little bit isolated. But then I find this. So here's an actual fresh cut branch. Very fresh. So he's got shooting across here, shooting down there. Sitting right in the middle of this crap here. You know, it took probably several days to build this, and maybe multiple people. As a matter of fact, he cleaned the forest. He took all them logs out of there and put them over here. There ain't a deer around that wouldn't figure that out. So this guy just basically ruined this area to make it a hunting spot. And I mean, I'd be surprised if he got a 1.5 years old out of here. The fresh rubs completely stopped when we got near this island, and I was wondering why, and this is why. Crazy. Can't believe people think like this. Like, he thinks he's gonna shoot a deer by letting every deer in the woods know he's here. They're just gonna avoid this spot. I think people don't grasp how they can smell where you've been. They can see differences. They live out here. They're gonna notice this. They're gonna notice what you did. They're gonna smell it. It looks like he's been doing it for years because there's fresh cut limbs and there's old cut limbs. So he's been hunting here for years, doing this every year. Probably wondering how the rest of us shoot giants when he just shoots little bucks. He's got a pretty good trail over here going around him and a good shooting lane. He could probably get something over here, but probably nothing of any real size. Good to know though, because I know where not to be, which is as important as where to be. Now I'm getting quite a ways out, and this is what a lot of people refer to as everything kind of looking the same. But what I do see is, I see some clusters of trees back in here. You know, that's where I'm expecting there could be a buck bedding, and that's far enough back that I think we're going to lose a lot of people. Because now we got to go through water and briars and stuff much further, and then we're pushing kind of about a mile from parking. So I don't see too many people just walking through here aimlessly to back there. And we're losing a lot of human sign, but we're picking up a lot of deer sign, a lot of browse. They're breaking these branches off, trying to eat this stuff. And there's a lot of feces and heavy trails as we get back in here further. We just kind of got to decipher exactly where they're coming from. These little bush islands, though, they could be bedding. We need to look at those, but everything out here that is edible is munched on. So deer are spending a lot of time here. Here's a bed right here against this tree. Any place there's a high spot, I guess. I want to see what's right here, but the trails are kind of going this way. I still see that island over there, kind of an island. Yeah, there's a high spot there with a bed in it. This is all matted down from bedding. Here on the back side of this tree, there's a bed. You can see where his back was. Good little nest there. Branch in front of him. Think about high grass here in the fall. Again, I'm looking at those high trees out there. I'm still looking at them. That's a spot where there's just gonna be a little bit of elevation. There's gonna be a trail going down it. There's gonna be a spider of trails going to that. I think that's where the bedding's gonna be. There's an awful lot of deer sign in here. They're bedding someplace around here heavy because they're feeding pretty heavy right here. Here's a bed here and a bed there, and right in between them is a rub, and that rub is actually fairly high up. That could be a 3-year-old right there. That's pretty high up. So a deer standing in here, he's gonna be way lower when this ice is melted. That's a pretty high rub. So it's starting to get a little exciting as we're getting closer to these trees. We're seeing more and more good sign. What is nice too is there's not much for trees. And that'll keep people from hunting back here. Couldn't really hunt off the ground because this stuff's gonna be this high when the deer are back here. And that's gonna make it so a guy can't get a shot. He has to get into a tree. And what we do have for trees don't look set up to me. Don't look anybody hunted out of them. There's little beds underneath all of them. It's kind of in the middle of nowhere. How does a deer even get into there to rub that? Oh, there's more over here. Oh, there's a bed there, that's why. So you got a couple of beds right here, there. You see historical rubs and fresh rubs. These ones are all real low like a young deer, but that one looks pretty good there. It's high up, and there's branches broken way up in here. You're not low like those. Yeah, this is definitely, oh, there's a good rub in that, from that bed too, standing up right above it. So these are kind of later in the season, and this one is definitely an early season rub because it's from this year, but look at how gray it is. Laying right here. So this is like a cluster of beds right here. This ain't bad. Here's a bed. It's got a little, almost like a cave there. There's a fresh rub over here. I'd be willing to bet that this is a bed in early season. Deer standing here. That ain't too bad a height, but I don't see real high tine length. Probably a 2-year-old in here. Starting to look like all this travel coming out of here. Those trees over there might be a good starting point right there, because that's like 100 yards from these beds where the buck sign starts picking up. But I definitely want to see what's going on that point there before I make up my mind where I want to sit. And as we're starting to enter, yeah, more and more big rubs, more and bigger. There's definitely some bedding in here. This water, you got to remember, was not here in early season. This was drier. And here's a fairly decent rub that's been rubbed year after year here. You see the old marks and the new marks. This is all in a pretty tight area too. We're just starting to get into those trees now. But this is just pounded with trails. There's more and more condensing of the trails as we get closer. So far getting into these trees, I'm not seeing much for fresh rubs, but I look over here and man, are there some big historical ones here. Right here and here show me something real big was living here at one point. There's probably actually a bed right here at one point, but now some sticks are laying in the spot. Here's a bed. There's a bed. There's a stand. Wonder how long that's been out here. It's all grown up around. I think it's probably been there a long time. Pretty good deer track right there. Look at that. Can't even get at it. This is the island I was thinking about looking at. Whoa! Rooster pheasant. It was sitting right there. Yeah, there's no climbing sticks or anything. That tree ain't even safe. Cushion's gone. Right where the chain is, it's starting to rot out. So that stand doesn't bother me at all. That's an old stand. Even from here I can see that it's got moss and stuff growing on the sides of it. That's been there for a couple of years at least. So whoever carried that back here either couldn't find his way back the next time he came, or he just gave up on this spot. So the island of trees I'm looking at kind of tapers down to a point here. And usually right at these points is a pretty good spot. You know, they bed around the points and they use that as travel, and I can see a rub right here. And, you know, small one, probably off of 2.5, but it's fresh. And I can see another one right here that looks pretty big. Yeah, that's off of a bigger buck for sure. And that's been rubbed a couple years in a row. Probably off of a 3-year-old, you know, based on the height. That's pretty high up. Well, it could be a 2-year-old. But, oh, I see something big over here. This trail is pretty pounded too. Right here. Oh yeah, look at this. And this rub is real high. Here, and there's an old one there. Oh, look at this rub over here. Man, that one's really high. And there's a good one there. Yeah, there's one there, but look at this one. It's an old one there. This one, that's starting to look like pushing maturity. So this area right here on this point is pretty good. So I marked this tree right here on the point, which covers that trail that goes right through here. We could access from that way and not really affect any of this. That's where we're finding the big rubs and beds and stuff up and into here, and then the trails kind of come around over here, and there's some big buck bedding over there coming out over here, and then this trail here that definitely has them traveling on it, and it goes into this. So that's the tree from down the trail, looking at that point coming out of, following that point. Right here's the end of the point. This is where all the sign is. So I want to take a closer look at these trees, and you can see that this was real early in the year when these were rubbed, for sure. There's not even any bark underneath them, and that is dull as heck. Getting all the way to the back side of this bedding area and finding this point was kind of key. That point really funneled the bucks down through it from the buck bedding area. Now that buck bedding area wasn't like you find in farm country or tight in cattail marshes. It was spread out. I mean, there was like a 2 or 3 acre area where those big bucks were holing up. That's still smaller than the whole area with all the bedding and stuff. But there's a key area that was fairly large. But that point funneled those deer towards crops and away from pressure. There was one other area that I felt would funnel them the same way that we hadn't looked at yet. So now we're going to go to the back side of that same bedding, look at some of the bedding over there because I hadn't been over there yet, and make our way out and follow the deer out of that bedding and find another spot on that side. And that should cover that whole bedding area. And from those 2 spots, I should be able to see any deer moving coming out of that bedding into grass. Now I'm starting to see a lot more of these dry land beds underneath these trees and stuff. Just up, this whole area is just up out of the water. Look at this historical rub here. And there's just literally just pounded with tracks everywhere. They're just living right back in here. There's a bed there. This is where they're at. So I'm pretty sure anything mature is living right here. Here's a little rub, historical rub. There's a fresh one over there. That's a small one though. Here's a scrape, licking branch. No fresh human sign whatsoever. So just see the really good cross trail coming into here, right into this area that we determined is probably the buck bedding area. And I can see rubs on the exit here, historical and fresh. And there's a sawed off limb, but from years ago. But that's fresh, pretty low though, 2-year-old. There's historical. That's historical. Whoever hunted, probably hunted out of this tree here, is growing in now. I mean, that cut's from years ago. Cut right there too. There's a rub there too. Can't believe anybody's getting back this far. There's a nice tree right there. A little too close to the bedding. So it looks like this trail kind of goes up into there, but there's a big historical right there too. Kind of looks like the hunter sign is along that old snowmobile trail, which is all grown in and you can't even follow it anymore. So I think as soon as they didn't have a path going back here, they quit hunting back here. There's lots of historical rubs, but I'm not seeing a lot of fresh ones. I mean, I've seen sign of one good buck so far. Not a lot of sign. giants like I would have expected. This area in here is just pummeled with tracks because this area is low and muddy. I mean, they didn't get any more tracks than over there, but here you can see them real obvious. And what do you see here? An old blind. Where somebody sat right there and they built a log blind. Again, you can say it hasn't been used in a while. There's limbs growing into it and stuff where you'd be sitting. But obvious reasons why he would pick that, because this is just solid deer tracks everywhere. But that's only because of the mud. Those deer tracks would be everywhere here if this whole thing was muddy. So this trail here, look at this. Broken branch with deer hairs in it, see that? Oh, that's a pretty big track there, holy cow. Wow, that's a good sign. Yeah. And there he is again. That's a pretty big track there. There's a bed right there. A lot of these little bed holes like this, just up out of the swamp like that, underneath the brush. An awfully long ways back to haul a chair like that. Holy cow. That has probably been there for a long time. Oh yeah, look, there's an old wooden platform too. See that? There's a pounded down bed right there. Here's another scrape. There's the licking branch here. There's a bed right there. Another one right here. This one has a lot of historical rubs right in it, but no fresh. There's another big historical one back there. This is a pretty good one. Nice height on it. All by itself. Still not seeing much for human sign, except for the occasional, like this old Pepsi can from, looks like the 80s or early 90s. This tree's been trashed here too. There too. Same trail, there's one over here too that looks fairly nice. Yeah, that's nice and high. There's a small one back there from a young buck too, but this is fairly high right here. Clumps of hair, and more and more and more. Like something got dragged through here. Let's see if we can find a dead deer back here someplace. A lot of beds in here. Here's another one. Here's another cave bed. You look at this thick cover and there's a hole going in here into this little bedding area. that island where the point is over there. And then I got a spot set up. This is where the bedding's coming from. This is where, you know, all the bigger sign is. I mean, these little bedding holes and stuff. And it kind of ends right here and turns into grass. And we determined that over there, there's blinds and people hunting if the deer go that way. I think the deer are gonna go this way towards food. And we got some trees over here. And this is open grass to there. And that's got about a 50 to 75 yard buffer. I think those trees could be a good spot to hunt if I can find a spot to set up in. And the trail that comes out of the bedding on this side goes right towards them. So that brush you see over there, that's where those bucks are bedding. That point that we looked at for a stand earlier is over there. And this is kind of the back exit coming this way because there's food behind me. And I don't think they're going that way because that's where we found all that sign of hunters that we didn't expect but found is over there. So they're hunting that edge, around the edge of the bedding, forcing those deer to go this way or to go that way. And I think that this tree right here would be a good spot. I mean, not only would I have good shooting at all those trails coming out right here, I can see a long ways in this grass. And any deer that pops out anywhere along this edge, I should be able to get glasses on. This is a good spot. Now the thing is, I didn't see a lot of sign of real big bucks. But there isn't big bucks in these areas every year. When there's one here is the time to hunt here. So I'm not sure if there'll be one in here this fall or not. But there's a good chance of it. The area holds some good bucks. Now I did see a lot of good bucks just, you know, half mile from here with no roads in between. But they could be coming from a private sanctuary that's over that way. I do think this area's got some potential though. So I'm gonna mark this tree and maybe even get in here for a hunt or two during the fall and just see what I see out here. This would be a good starting tree. I could start here. If I don't see nothing, hit the other one. Don't see nothing, gone. Pretty obvious that most of the sign in here is, you know, early seasons, you know, September to early October. So getting here at that time frame I think would be good. Try this out. There is a possibility there's big bucks in there that aren't leaving a lot of sign. And I did see sign of deer that could be like 3 years old, which would definitely be shooters this year. So we'll mark this tree and I'm done for today. Well, I just got just I don't know, 50 yards from my tree, headed back towards the truck, and look what I find. That rub is probably off a 3-year-old. So just a little more incentive to actually give this a shot this fall. You know, maybe they don't have a lot of competition. They're not rubbing all that much. So what did we get out of today? I spent an entire day scouting and I found 2 spots. They're not the greatest spots, but they are where a buck's gonna move out of those bedding areas if there's one there. So now, I gotta keep track if there's good bucks around and hunt those 2 spots. Those will give me 2 hunts. Now I gotta find enough to cover the other 100 days of the season. Hanger, look at that. That's a pretty good one. On a mass to it. Cool. Got a kind of unique hook to it. Just looking at this right here, I didn't even notice. I look over and look at this. That's a nice one. That actually might be the other side of the one I found already. It's got that hook in the front. Nice. A couple takeaways from this. Number one, it looks like it's the same buck last year and then this year, because look at how it's got that little point here on both sides.
and they got kind of the same framework, bedded in the exact same spot. I mean, his antlers were a couple feet from each other. So it tells you they probably bed in that spot year after year. And the other takeaway is, if that antler just laid there in the open for a year, that tells me nobody's going in there.
So here's all three antlers next to each other. You can obviously see that those two are a match. See the crazy hook up here on both of them? And if you look at this one, I believe that's from the year before. It's just starting to develop that hook. It hasn't gotten long enough yet. That's a 2-year-old. This is probably a 3-year-old. But it's also got this little unique thing here on both those two antlers. And the pedicle is pretty similar. Obviously the same deer. These two sheds were found about 180 yards away from each other. The one was found on a trail leading from that bedding to food, and that was found in the bedding, and that was found in the bedding. If you're out scouting and you find deer bones, deer skulls, and especially big buck skulls in an overlooked bedding area, you might want to hang a tree stand, because when big bucks are wounded or they're sick or they're dying, they tend to go to bed in places where they feel safe. And those safe places are the spots where they hang out the most. And those can be killer spots to hunt.